viable task. I mean, this was
that's very true.
She had a tough
Right.
job to do in terms of dealing with
Actually, on that point, a bit worried about. Can we get some news about how she's feeling, because she couldn't complete her speech? It was a bit worrying towards the end. Can we get some news on that?
She had I think she had a tough job to do, without question, given the deficit. And I think the approach could be one of the two things. You know, it was what Sumat mentioned earlier on. One could either have taken the tack of saying, look, if you're in trouble in a company, for example, if you're in trouble, they say, do less, right? I think you could either do that, or you can try to do more. Do more generally doesn't work, right? And I think, unfortunately, we seem to have gone down that road of trying to do many things and trying to appeal to every constituency. And I think actually focusing and doing less and working on a few things would actually be more effective.
Quality rather than quantity. 16 points on agriculture. Give me three that were bigger.
Exactly. What I would have hope for is that, and I think it's probably the way we should see budgets going forward, is that we shouldn't see budgets as being such a big deal as we make them out to be. You know, many other countries have moved to a much less newsworthy budget. The US, the budget doesn't make news at all.
Right.
In
That's
the UK,
the way to go. I mean,
in the UK, the budget makes much the budget makes much less news in the UK than it used to
all the time
earlier on. And I think we must move to that kind of a an environment where we actually look forward now from the budget and say, what are those few things that the government's going to work hard at and try and do that will actually enhance the recovery of the economy. So I think we have to hope for that. We have to really see how we can focus on doing those right things.
A once in a year thing. It should happen every few months.
Have something that comes out often. I just want to mention one thing on the corporate tax cut.
Right.
I'll tell you what we're doing as a company. We calculate. We've opted for the lower tax rate.
Right.
We calculated what the total saving in cash to us as a company was, and we said we will spend this total amount incrementally this year before the end of March, as a way of saying that, look, if we've saved so much in the way of tax this year, let's spend it all, because that was the intention.
Right.
The intention of the tax cut was to create more funds and resources with companies for investment, and if we use it in the way in which it was intended, I think it can have that kind of a multiplier effect going forward. So I think you know, the tax cut is not just going to be used for sitting on the extra resources or reducing
debt. But you will only invest
in
if you feel the economy needs it, you're going to get returns. You're not going to invest just because the government wants you to. You got to feel the economy is reviving. Tell us a bit about the airline sector. The whole I feel the general policy especially started in Japan. When a sector is doing badly, you help it. When an individual company is doing badly in a sector, you don't help it. Now the whole sector, airline sector, is struggling a bit.
The sector is struggling, and of course, you know, a lot of stuff needs to be done to bring it on par with the, you know, the aviation sectors around the world. Many airlines with whom we increasingly compete. But a large part of that really has to do with the GST Council. So, you know, a lot of the reform that we need really is part of the GST Council. Having said that, I think a couple of things they did do in this budget. One is, of course, the 100 new airports under UDAN. UDAN has to be one of the most successful schemes of this government. Just 2 years ago, you know, there were all these airports which were sitting around, which were never used. There were no flights going in there, no passengers going out of there. There are 50 odd airports which have been added to the aviation infrastructure in the last 2 years. So all sorts of places like, you know, Ajmer or Porbandar or Kandla, places where there was absolutely zero flights. Flights are going now. So UDAN is a greatly successful scheme. To add 100 airports to that scheme by 2024, I think is a big plus. I think this whole Krishi UDAN, let's see what the scheme is. But we've been trying to do this, you know, try and get some farm produce, try and send it to Hong Kong, try and send it to Dubai. If they build a scheme around that, great. I think, but in as a general direction, some of the good stuff which has happened is that I think for the first time there seems to be a sense that businessmen, when they went and talked to the Prime Minister or when they went and talked to the Finance Minister, were actually listened to. There were issues like tax terrorism, which
wasn't it true the Finance Minister wasn't many of those meetings she wasn't there?
No, but in general, when you spoke to the government, you spoke about tax
got a
terrorism.
response.
There is some response. There is something which is reflected in this
Unlike
budget,
earlier.
which shows that they were actually listening. This whole business of trying to have settlements.
They recognize that the country is in a crisis, the economy is in a crisis? Is that recognition there, or do they say you guys are exaggerating the problem?
No, I think the recognition is certainly there.
Is there?
I think if you're saying that nominal GDP is going to grow 10%, you're basically saying that real GDP is going to grow 5.5%. I mean, what else is this if this is not recognition?
Yeah, that's true. That's recognition.
So I think also this business of trying to encourage long-term capital, sovereign wealth funds trying to get in without tax. I think that's a good step. Pension funds trying to get in.
One other thing in the airline sector, like most disinvestments, Air India. I mean, we're waiting a year to just a small little company. Do we need Arun Shourie back to, I mean, the amount that he did under the Vajpayee regime was more than entire life of the Congress party, which is a pretty long time,
I think,
and certainly much more than the current government.
Yeah.
So what's happened with Air India? It's just
I think this is, I think, we are one of the companies that have been spoken to on this issue. I think they are speaking to a whole host of potential investors on Air India. They have never been more serious. Pranoy, I can tell you, the formulation that they have this time, the first round flopped, that the conditions were impossible. It was doomed to failure in a sense. I think this time around, they've never been more serious. They've taken debt down considerably. They are being extremely flexible, and it's just one of those really tough disinvestments. So hopefully it will go through.
The broader question is there's so much dependence on revenues from disinvestment, which didn't happen last year. The learning from Air India should we take these disinvestment targets, which are very high, seriously or not?
I think they are basically planning to IPO LIC, so they should get a fair amount. That's easy to do. They should get a fair amount of money from there. So the target might be realistic. IDBI, if they sell the stake in IDBI, I think that should add up to quite a bit. I don't think they're expecting to get much money out of Air India. This is a particularly sensitive and difficult one to try and do for them. But having said that, I think if you just look at the expression of interest document for Air India, it's vastly different from what it was the last time. So there seems to have been some learning in there, for sure.
Trial and error. Chalo, kuch to hai. Yeah. You're looking very pleased with yourself. We were just discussing, are there really big ideas in this budget? Does it recognize the crisis the economy is in? Has it done anything that will impact a revival and cause a revival in the economy? Big
I think
ideas.
over the last 3 to 6 months, one has seen with conversation government that there is a realization. It was not there earlier, by the way. It is very clear now. In fact, for the last few months, they've been asking for ideas on what can have an immediate impact and what is it we need to do for the long term.
Right.
And I think this budget covered some of them. Actually, it was a very vast canvas that got covered.
Right.
Many little ideas, many things which sounded like motherhood statements, but if you implement them, actually there's a pretty good salutary impact on the overall economy. What could have had direct impact of putting additional cash in farmers' hands or individuals' hands through the Manrega, that I think got constrained by the amount of money that's available. And also the amount of number of things in which it's got allocated.
But that's a very good point. If they had used this one crisis situation to do that, it could have affected demand. And you say, okay, forget 3.5% budget deficit, we'll go to 4% this year and give that money into the hands of people.
So this is an instrument which has been tried in many countries in a crisis. This excessive focus on holding onto fiscal deficit at a certain level.
Yes, exactly.
And I actually made this comment many times earlier in the last 6 months that we should allow the slippage. The only thing you have to watch out is where is that extra money being used? So it goes directly into things which are either productive, give immediate response, or is infrastructure which allows it has a double whammy benefit. While the infrastructure projects are on, they create employment. Once they're finished, they lubricate the economy much better. They give more multiplier. Multiplier is enormous. So,
but even putting it directly into people's hands could have been,
But
this
again,
was the
that's
opportunity.
Yeah, but
I think
again,
that's what
it's
America did compared to Europe, and therefore never really
America
went
also
into...
did what I'm saying. They allowed the fiscal deficit to slip.
That's
And
what I mean, yeah.
They spent their way out of this crisis.
Exactly,
Because growth has a
exactly.
magical quality. If you grow,
I thought you said Trump has a magical quality.
if you grow enough, your ability to make up for whatever you've lost over a period of time is very high.
Yeah.
Because otherwise the struggle continues for a long time. Fortunately, they have done many things which will encourage investment, especially from overseas. There's been more done for overseas investment by way of sovereign wealth funds getting tax breaks on actually complete exemption on investing in infrastructure and specified
To
industries.
all of
and
us, I don't know, Mukesh also, that seemed to be a big idea. I'm just not aware of how big sovereign fund wealth funds investment will be. How big is it?
Well, I think it's contingent on a host of factors. One is the appetite of sovereign funds to look at the Indian markets. So the appetite today, given where the state of the economy is far less than what the appetite was, say when Mr. Modi came to power in 2014. The second is...
I think you made a point that if it should not have been only sovereign wealth funds, anybody investing in infrastructure should have been given...
That's right.
Tax breaks, huge tax breaks.
Yeah, so the only benefit that has continued till March 2023 is other funds that are investing in infrastructure projects, the concessional rate of withholding tax of 5%, which was legislated several years back and they keep on increasing, that is available.
Yeah, it's very small.
But the exemption for sovereign funds is an all-encompassing exemption. It covers dividends, capital gains, interest.
Yeah,
whereas
that's huge.
the exemption, 5% withholding tax applies to funds only from an interest outgo standpoint.
Yeah. But tell me, one is to really encourage infrastructure, but currently if you talk to people involved in infrastructure, they're not even getting paid.
Yeah, so there is a problem.
Forget a tax break, get your money. And
there is a
then
problem. But
it slows down everything.
So actually, you have to look at it from multiple perspectives. Now, from any one angle that you look at, you'll see part of the issue or part of the problem.
Right.
That they're encouraging more airports to be built, planning to build more colleges, medical colleges. I think there are some super things in this budget. I've just not read the detail to understand the allocation of resources, the revenue. There is some additional borrowing being done, by the way. I think it's about 12% higher. I hope we can stay within this, because any higher would then start to make funding more expensive and also crowd out the private sector, which you can't afford right now, because you want to encourage private sector now to get back to borrowing more and building the industry back as it was.
Anything for NBFCs? They're in terrible crisis.
So there was a little bit. They had actually made the big announcement last year. They implemented this guarantee, partial guarantee, which has just got implemented only a couple of months back.
Yeah, but it hasn't really...
So she talked of pushing that. No, it should have been implemented a little bit earlier, but I think it's a useful thing to do. I think that's one front on which we could do more. Last mile funding is what is promoting consumption in the last 10 to 15 years in India.
Right.
So it was these twin track which actually helps consumption, which helps capacity utilization, which then therefore brings back investment into capacity creation.
Yeah. One follow-up question: are you buying Air India?
I've always said that we are too small.
You don't have to tell us.
We are too small, and this is too big a, company to try and swallow for somebody as small as us.
That means you're probably going to buy it, actually. Knowing you. Tell me about Blue Star.
I am from Blue Star.
Sorry? You're Blue Star, sorry, yes.
So I am wearing two hats. First, CI hat, I head the Agriculture Council.
Okay.
So you made a point about 16. While submitting the memorandum, we were very clear. It has to be in three buckets. One is to do with the reforms, which has been addressed. The APML Act or the contract forming or the land
You're going
leasing.
above my head. Probably.
Three.
What do you understand?
Contract forming or the land leasing and the agriculture market, the APLM Act, the states must be encouraged. That was reinforced.
Right.
We have to wait and see how much they can push the states to
These
implement.
are all very good ideas, incidentally.
Right.
Because they have a direct impact. so you still have the majority of the country depending on agriculture as a primary source of income.
Yep.
So unless you're able to create more efficiency there, this challenge will be a drag on people and on the economy, both. So it is essential to figure out. So one thing they have done, by the way, is allow fallow land for solar panels, etc., which will give additional income. It's almost like a third crop is what they keep calling it.
Done it anyway.
So, no, we should do, by the way.
No, I mean, they had the fallow land, they could done it anyway. I don't know, want to...
Now a lot of, I'm into this space as well.
Into which space?
Solar and wind.
Right.
And in Karnataka, actually, instead of buying the land, I'm leasing it. So on a crop, say they were making 10,000 because there was no irrigation, they couldn't do 3 crop, an acre. So I'm giving the lease of 40,000 plus I have a revenue share because I get higher tariff for Kushum Yojana.
Right.
So the IRR which I improve, I'm willing to share. So what is happening, the farmer who was not even making any money from that land is now earning 1 lakh.
Wow.
So this actually, if you scale up, like in Gujarat, they have...
Why did you need anything in the budget? You're already doing it.
No, so this was announced in the Kusum. They have allocated more budget for states to encourage. So Gujarat was doing it, Karnataka was doing it, many states were not doing it. Okay. So once you allocate more budget and supportive structure,
it'll encourage.
So say for example in the wholesale market, you are getting a 280.
20 lakh farmer have been covered into.
And actually the other thing which they have done is this solar pumps. So this 20 lakh solar pump you give at subsidized cost, plus you are connecting them to the grid. So the game changer is you use water for 1 hour. Next 7 hours you are giving power to the grid under net metering. It's a forced policy. So the utilities are supposed to pay you. Okay. So that
he was just saying,
the second one is connected with the storage. One district level storage system. That if it is implemented, it's a needle moving thing actually. Combined with railways to be leveraged for transportation.
Right.
Coming to Blue Star, I think real estate sector is something which didn't get much in this for the hotels, hospitals or airports, malls.
Which is a pity because that's in a real problem section.
So it is disappointing. How long that industry is going to take to revive is a serious issue.
Right. We'll just take a short break and come back with more ideas of what are the positives in this budget and are they big positives and will they change, will they have an impact on our economy? That's in a moment from now. See you then.